We're going to start out simple. Name and age.
Age?
Well, if you
No,
choose.
I have no problem with that. Paul Eickel, I'm 77 years old, and I've lived in Elmore ever since 1963.
Tell us what brought you here.
Money.
Wow, that's not bad.
I had taught 6 years in 2 other schools. I've been in southeastern Ohio, Appalachia, and the schools up here paid more than what the schools down there did, and so I came looking for a job, and came up and was interviewed by Pat Hetrick, who was my superintendent for quite a few years, and that was an interesting story for me. I came in to meet the man, and first thing I did was back into a poll at Redmond's Ohio station. I went an introduction to the town, the first thing I did, and went down and Pat showed me around the whole building, told me, answered every question I had, and when we got all done, he says, well, what do you think? And I says, well, I like it. He says, you want the job? And I says, yeah. He says, you got it. And I said, you don't have to go to the Board of Education or to the county superintendent or anything. He looked at me and says, if I say you got the job, you got the job. And I said, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, never dreamed I'd still be here, all these years after 1963. But
Not to backtrack a lot, but where were you born, Bob?
in Corning, Ohio. Grew up there. It's in southeastern Ohio. And I'd gone back to that area to teach at New Lexington, Ohio, and had some success with some basketball teams there. But I can tell you, not with any pleasure, that I had my first couple of years of coaching, had one of the worst records that was ever compiled by any coach anywhere. A little school called Whetstone down near Bucyrus. It was a little school. You had 33 boys, the upper 4 grades, and we got beat, but one night 129 to 33. And the first year I was there, we won one game, and the only way we won was the referees homered the other team, and their coach was so mad he wouldn't let the kids stay and eat, wouldn't have a shower, get in the bus and get out of here, and he had every right to be unhappy. We celebrated. We drove through Bucyrus blowing our horns and all kind of things like that. And the second year I was there, we didn't win any, and I was the head basketball coach, the JV basketball coach, and the junior high basketball coach, and found out that the boys at that school had never ever won a championship in anything. The girls had back in the 30s, but there were 3 or 4 trophies up there for them. The guys had never done it. But the last year I was there, helped me keep my sanity. We won the league championship with the junior high, and I say that was the first trophy the boys had ever won. And I figured I can't be totally stupid, although if you look at the record, you'd think they must have been. So, but
Well, there were people there before you, obviously, so.
yeah. Well, I don't know they were all as bad as the record I had at that time, but I was amazed when I finally got a job at New Lexington, and had good success down there. We won the league championship 2 years out of 4, and came in second place in the 3rd year. So that was good. That way, it was easier to get another job as a basketball coach.
Sure.
But the first 2 years were very, very discouraging. Nice kids, but it was there just wasn't much to choose from. That's all there was to it. So anyhow.
So we'll bring you back to Elmore, and you're going to teach. Tell us about your early years, and I don't care what direction you go.
Well, I am a social studies teacher, and have a degree in physical education and health, and in social studies, and loved to teach world history. That was my favorite subject. Really enjoyed that, and had some really good history students, which always helps too. But they were, there were just more kids to choose from as far as that goes. But it was a good thing. So, and had some success with the basketball teams up here in 5 years, and then at the end of that 5 years, they consolidated. They take that back. They merged. There is a technical difference, but what it amounted to was Woodville took Elmore in, and as a result of that, I was promoted to athletic director, and I didn't call it a promotion because I wanted to be the head basketball coach, but they said, no, you're the only one qualified for it. So became the athletic director, and I was athletic director, I don't know how many years off and on, because I was athletic director, and I became athletic director again later. It was just, over the years things accumulate, but it was a good time. I really have enjoyed my stay here in Elmore. I can tell you that some of the old standard names, the Dam Schroeders, the Dydemeyers, the Haars, those names were standard back in that time. We have a lot more variety in our names in Elmore today than what we did back then, but many of those families are still there, and it still is a pleasure to me to meet some of the old basketball players, and they still call you coach after 40 years, and that's nice. But the rest of it, there's been a lot of changes taking place. Of course, the biggest one was say the merger of the two schools. It took some brave people over at Woodville to say they would accept us. Not that we were a bad school or anything like that, but there wasn't any part of it, but it was going to be big changes. Of course, the biggest one, as far as they were concerned, was that the high school ended up in Elmore, and the elementary school ended up in Woodville. And they had two different college groups from Ohio State and University of Toledo came and inspected the schools, and that was their recommendation said that this site was better suited for a high school than that one was over there. But there have been people in Woodville who are still never forgiven them for making that decision. But they did what they thought was best for the students. I know that we really worked very hard trying to get the students ready for each other. We had meetings between, we bring kids over and meet with each other, and because we were afraid that going to be, I saw you keep your hands off my girl or else, and never happened once. Never happened once. The kids got together like they'd been together all along, and it worked out just beautifully. I could give them a lot of credit.
And that was in the 60s? 63
through 68 was when they came over. I had 5 years here at Harris-Elmore, and then 68 they put them together, and been that way ever since that time. But and it's worked out really well. It's been a good move. With my personal experiences, one of the things that I enjoyed doing the most was I started the high school quiz team here in Elmore. Got to watching TV and saw this program was on there, and I said, well, what do you got to do to be on that? And I called up the DV station, and they explained it to me, and the next year we were in it. And that was a lot of fun, because we had some really top-notch kids that did well and really liked being on TV. They enjoyed that kind of experience. That was a good thing. And we still have a high school quiz team today. After all these years, they're still going. And as I say, that one I was real happy with. Worked with the Key Club for a long time. When I took over, I think there were about 13 kids in the Key Club. And when I left it, we had about 35. And then Jan Preston took it over, and she got it up into almost 100 of them. She really made it blossom. So she became Mrs. Key Club as far as that goes. So that was a good experience too. So really liked that. Belonged to the Kiwanis Club here in town for over 30 years. And just those things you don't even think about when they happen, and they 30 years later are still there. So But I guess the other thing I would like to mention, if that's all right with you, is that I think there have been some major changes in maybe student anticipation in the years since I've been teaching. Teachers had more respect from students back in those early days, and it's something today that students will look right at you and say, "My mom will sue you if you do that," and that's not a good thing.
No.
Really, it really isn't a good thing. But and along with that, I think the students, and I'm still subbing at the high school. Along with that, the students want the teachers to do more of the work for them. They think that you should do all the grimy stuff, and they'll copy it down, and it helps. They like it better if you don't have to copy it down. You just pass out the paper, and it's got everything on it that you want to know in the first place. It's I'm not joking. It's harder to fail today than what it used to be. There's so many ways that they have of giving grades away, and I always have a dichotomy in my own mind on this, in that they make it easier for the students, and yet the students are learning. They do well, and you know it. I don't know why that is, but they don't want to do as much of it themselves. But I guess maybe they will if you force them to do it. But you know that's just one of those things that I don't think we're doing them any favors by giving them extra credit things to do that sometimes have very little to do with whatever it is you're doing. I don't think that we're doing them any favors by making special tests for special people. It's mandated, you have to do it, but those are exceptions to what I think are good rules for teaching, and it's one of those things that I guess you have to live with it.
Yeah. Does that have anything to do with mainstreaming, or is that just?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. You were in administration too. Is there anything along that line that you wanted to pull in?
Well, I was surprised when I was hired to be the assistant superintendent that how many things were involved in being the assistant superintendent that I didn't feel I was really prepared for. I was in charge of purchasing all kinds of stuff that I didn't know anything at all about. Such simple stuff as even wax for the floors and things like that. I relied heavily on getting advice from the custodians, and you know,
Sure.
but there were those kind of things came up frequently. I was in charge of bus transportation, and that was an interesting, especially on some blustery, snowy mornings when you had to go out and check to see if the roads were suitable for, and that was one of those things that my son was perfectly willing to go with me on those trips and help give me advice that this was a good day to close schools. We shouldn't be having school today. Couldn't rely on his version of it all the time, but he was willing to get up and go. And one morning he had to get up and push when we got stuck. But that you know, those were just some of the things that were involved in it, and was still athletic director again at that time. So. And was operating out of 2 buildings, and see, I had to carry a clipboard with me all the time because wherever you were, someone in the other building wanted you, and you had to write things down and be ready for whatever came up. It was a busy job. It really was. I haven't gone over nearly the number of things that you were required to do. Being the principal was I thought was a good job. I like that.
All of your experience in school was in the high school?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, junior high.
Okay, junior
Goes
high.
7 through 12.
Right.
But, yeah, and I was never elementary or anything like that. And I really would not be a good elementary school teacher. It takes more patience than what I've got. They can be charming little creatures, but when it comes to working with them, I can candidly say the smarter the kid is, the better I like them. That's just one of those things that I've known some great teachers who would just work their heads off with the other students who were having problems of one sort or another. Wasn't my strong point, but I really like getting those ones that ask you questions and want to ask some more questions. Fortunately, we've had some real good ones like that around here, and I've been fortunate to be able to work with some that they make it a pleasure. When I finally retired in 1995, it was for one simple reason. I had grown sick and tired of making out tests and grading papers night after night after night. People don't realize how much time teachers spend after school. They give hear those lines, oh, well, geez, you don't work all summer, you only work 6 hours a day. They're so far wrong on that. And I really just got tired of that routine. Besides that, I've been teaching 35 years until at that time, something like that anyhow, so it wasn't a bad idea to go. I like subbing now because at the end of the day, I do whatever the teacher leaves for me to do. At the end of the day, I gather up whatever papers we've got. I make a neat pile of them, leave them lay on her desk, and I go home and I don't grade any papers and things like that. So to me, that's the big advantage about it. It also means, though, that I'm also teaching classes that sometimes I'm not at all qualified to teach. I've been in as a teacher for calculus and trigonometry and stuff like that. Those are not my subject areas. Believe me, I'm nowhere there. I can do what the teacher tells me to do, but I tell the students, here's what he's left for you to do. Don't ask me any questions because I don't have the answers. So, and that goes over all right because they're working on what they are knowing that they're doing, and I really don't have to be the smartest one in the class to do that.
Yeah, as long as they don't stretch that out, you're just fine.
Yeah, if they do what he left for them to do, they do it, pass it in, and I think the kids at Woodmore are some of the best behaved. I do not go anywhere else, any other school besides here, and very, very seldom have any kind of a problem discipline-wise or anything like that. The kids are nice kids, and when I get to go into a history class, I say, today I teach, because this one I know, this one I can do. I could probably say that with gym classes and things like that, except, and I don't think this is stretching it, but the girls give you more problem there because they try to get out of doing things that are too physical. When they play games, the boys get more boisterous. They want to play dodgeball. The girls are ducking and the boys are throwing, and
At least a certain percentage. You're absolutely right from experience.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Well, there are some of the girls will get in. They'll do whatever. I mean, and I think that's great. They participate. Otherwise, they'll kind of huddle over in a corner.
Yeah.
And they keep saying, "Hey, you're not participating. Do I have to go out there?" Well, it's, some of the times it's just they're playing kickball or something like that. No, they're not going to get banged with the ball on that.
Right.
But they just as soon not have to, I guess, have someone else show them up if they're not really skilled at them. Or
Yeah, I'm not real sure on that. We had, from my experience in gym class, the girls didn't want to even be there at gym class.
Yeah.
And I really never ran into that because it was one of my favorite classes. So I don't really understand the thoughts behind it, but they didn't want to participate at all, including not being there.
Well, and I don't think that many girls would feel that they were putting themselves down by not wanting to be competitive about it. Most of the boys will say, well, they're going to think I'm a sissy or something like that if I don't get out and take my turn. But girls don't feel that way. They say, I'm a girl. I don't have
Yeah.
But we do have some of them love to get in right with everyone else, and they'll go gung ho for whatever's happening out there. It works out real well. Those say I like performance, so and that's a good thing. Any other particular question?
No, but one thing that we did skip over at this point is that you mentioned your son. You want to talk about your family a little bit? Since you brought him with you, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I had a daughter who was my first child, and then I had a son later on, and my daughter was one of those who was into everything, doing everything. She was chosen as senior most likely to succeed, and that kind of thing. She was a pride and joy. She was a cheerleader. She was in everything. That's a funny thing too. She looks back on it now and says, "Dad, what was I thinking about? Why did I want to so badly to be a cheerleader?" And she says, I look back on it now and I say, so what? But she was someone to make you proud. She still does. My son was another story. He was a very gregarious, outgoing, charming young boy up through the 8th grade. He was a straight A student. He was an athlete. He was quarterback on a football team. He was a pitcher on the baseball team. And of those games he played, the only one he stayed with when he liked the time was cross country. He loved Jim Smithy, who was the coach, and he liked running cross country. And he had a bad problem. He was born premature, and when he got into the 8th grade, he developed terrible veins in his legs and had to have them all stripped and everything like that. And he could not be on the ball team. And he made a conscious decision: if he couldn't be part of the team, he wasn't going to be with the team. And he changed all of his friends for the worse. I mean, he went from being, a straight A student to someone who wouldn't study, wouldn't work. He told me over and over again, I can make a C without ever opening the book. And that was good enough for him. And I say his older sister had been in everything. He wouldn't join anything. He became seriously mentally ill. And when he was 32, he committed suicide.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So was I, but it was a rough life. I was a favor of tough love, and talked about kicking him out of the house, and this was after he graduated, things like that, and could never convince my wife of that. She couldn't go along with it. I'm glad we didn't, but I was ready to try that, but she couldn't picture him sleeping under a bridge in the wintertime or anything like that. So, but he eventually hung himself, and up in Port Clinton, he was getting treated, but don't know what exactly circumstance convinced him that. And he was just miserable all the time. He really was uncomfortable with his existence, the way he was living, and it was just a bad situation. So he got off to such a great start. Even in kindergarten, he was they had some kind of a big program they put on, and he was chosen to be the one to be the MC or whatever you wanted to call him. And I'd say he was a really good student, but he about that same time he had the operation, his whole attitude changed on everything, and it was not a lot of fun being in high school, and especially that was when the time I was the principal. And how many times did I have some teacher come down and say, "Mr. Eickel, Jay's taken off again," and I wouldn't go chase him. I knew he had to come home, but and he knew he'd get the devil when he got there, but that didn't stop him from doing it the next time. So that's just one of those unfortunate circumstances that things just went wrong for him.
Sure.
He had a bright future that never panned out. So I don't know what you can do about that.
Nothing.
Nothing.
You really can't.
Well, we tried about everything we could think of, and actually did get help, but that was one of those sad kind of situation too. He was being treated by a psychologist up in Fort Clinton for manic depression, and he tried to commit suicide once while he was in high school, and got him into the hospital and went up there to he came and got me in school. Of course, I went up there and he was being treated. They were trying to get he was trying to commit suicide by getting in a car and turning on the engine and running it that way. They I don't know what they call hyperbaric treatment or something of that nature. And the guy, the doctor was treating him there, told me that he was psychotic. I said, well, we know that she's always said that he was suffering from depression. He says, oh, he told me that wasn't the case at all. And I said, wait a minute, there's something badly wrong here. And she's telling me us one story, telling you another one. And he says, oh, he didn't want to get involved in the middle of that, but she was treating him with talk therapy, and he needed medicine, and she wasn't qualified to prescribe it. And so she was telling us one thing, and I don't know that that would have saved his life or whatever, or cured him, but it didn't. So that's
Sadly, it may have contributed.
Yeah. So it's interesting being the high school principal, and one of the main characters you have to go running after is your own kid.
Well, we've heard those stories about preachers' kids.
Oh yeah,
Policeman's
PKs.
kid, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But I say, I was fortunate I had one that was really good, and one that potential never ever got a chance to use it really. So, what can you do? You hear all kinds of stories of people telling they have those situations happen in their families, or sometimes you just ready to throw up your hands and say, I don't know what to do next. So that's an unfortunate part of my life, and glad that, in a way, I'm glad it's over, because he was not happy
Sure.
the way he was.
Sure.
I mean, it just wasn't a cool situation, any way you want to think about it.
Sure.
So,
Well, and we didn't get into your council activities yet, and you were a longtime council person. And to bring the business people into that, if you think of stories with the businesses.
I was there about 26 years. I was president of the council for, I don't know how many years I was president of the council, quite a long time. And that's, it was interesting in that you never knew what was going to pop up on any council meeting. You never knew who was going to show up. You didn't know who was going to complain about something. And unfortunately, you cannot solve everybody's problem. That's just not physically possible, because there are laws, and although someone might feel terribly chagrined over what they consider to be a bad situation that you people ought to be doing something about, sometimes you can't. But once in a while you can, and I would say that it was an interesting situation. The other thing is that you got to remember there are 6 other councilmen and you are one vote.
Right.
And you can try to be persuasive and try to convince other people to change their mind, but when it comes right down to it, they'll vote the way they want to, and sometimes it isn't the way you want it to be. I know we've had people come on council and just knew they were going to get in there and shake things up and make things happen, and it doesn't work that way. It really doesn't. So it's nice when you're able to get something done that you can look at and say, hey, look at that bike trail out there. That's a good thing. You know, that happened while I was on council. We managed to do that. I can't say I did it, but I can say I was part of it.
Right.
And it's a good feeling. It's strange. I was teaching government and never ever considered running for the office. And one day, a man in town who was on council moved, and next thing I knew, they came over and said, "Would you fill his place?" I said, "I don't know that much about it." They said, "Well," and they explained a little, and I didn't even know you got paid for it. You don't get paid much for it, but it did have a salary with it, which I never once turned down. But it was interesting. Sometimes you were able to get an idea somewhere in a newspaper or someplace, and they, why don't we try that? And you can bring it up and introduce it. Sometimes they'd say yes, and sometimes they'd say, nah, we don't need that here. So it's just one of those interesting experiences in my life. Don't know that ever did anything world shaking or anything like that, but I still go to the council meetings just because I enjoy being there and hearing what they've got to say, and it's the same kind of things are happening. They get new names on things and things like that, but it's thank heavens. I think we got a good council right now. They take part, they do prepare, they get ready. I think that they've done a good job, but they can't change the world, and you can't. I mean, it's just that you can't even change our own little world here all the time. But it's an interesting experience, and it doesn't take any qualification except being voting age and a resident of the community, and anybody could do it if they wanted to try for it.
I assume that while you were on, you were put into committees and things like that. Did it lead to anything worth any kind of event that you're?
Well, I can tell you, with Lowell Crum now as mayor, he's always promoting Elmore. I don't care. He's always promoting Elmore. He gets some far out ideas once in a while, but by golly, he'll work his head off on them. And I think Lowell does a good job. Once in a while, you got to say, slow down. You're getting a little far out front of the rest of us here. But he spends a lot of time working on it. In fact, I wondered what he does at work sometimes, because he's got that cell phone buzzing quite frequently when he's calling people from up where he's working at. So anyhow, you do normally rotate your positions from year to year on the council. You can ask for a particular committee of the standing committees. You can ask me on one, but usually they do try to move you around from time to time. I was on the police department thing for a long time, which isn't very difficult because Chief Hayes runs a pretty tight ship, and he keeps on top of things pretty well. I think he quietly he irritates people once in a while because he will not give you names and dates and places, but he says no, that's we're not putting that in the paper. We're not going to do that, which is proper, which is all right. But sometimes people want to know, and he just tells them no, you're not going to do that. And and away you go. So, the you know, I couldn't say that there's one committee that is more effective or more doing more than any of the other ones are. And of course, we do, when it comes to what committee you're on, it comes down to the point where when the vote comes up, all 6 of you vote. And, you know, your votes are just as important as any other one that's out there. I was disappointed about one thing. Port Clinton took the lead in talking about trying to get more of a regional attempt to get things done. And I thought that was really a good idea. And it just didn't seem to pull out. They couldn't get enough active participation in it. But we talked about, you know, buying things regionally and, you know, getting a better cost per unit.
What would be something, for example, that would be regional use?
Well, we were talking, let's say, street repair. And say, put them all together and say we've got these jobs in Port Clinton, these jobs in Oak Harbor, these jobs in Elmore, bid on them. And, you know, it would be a bigger job, but we think that we would get better prices if they were, you know, getting a chance to get the whole thing. And, you know, we've talked about the, you know, purchasing just equipment and stuff like that. And it had a good ring to it, but it never seemed to get off the ground. I can't even think of the girl's name up there at Port Clinton who was pushing that real hard. But I had a couple of meetings on it with it, and then I got beat for running for town council after all these years. That was a kind of a surprise. I don't know that, but that's anything but the working of democracy.
Yeah, and the splitting of the votes. It's
It's one of those things that I didn't think that there was any crusade to get rid of me or anything like that, but it's just one of those things that came up that way. I even, right now, do not know in my own mind whether I would run for office again. I did enjoy being on there, but I can see that they work just as well without me there as they did when I was there. So nothing fell apart and collapsed when Eickel wasn't there anymore. That's one of the things, you know, you pull the hand out of the water and pretty soon the ripples are gone and can't see anything different there. So but that's something that you know, never expected to change the world, but it was fun being there. Frustrating at times, but it was fun too. So
because it is work after all.
Oh yes, it is. And sometimes something that you really think that would be a great idea doesn't catch on. It doesn't go. Just like that thing with having a regional attempt with things with Port Clinton. And I thought that was real good. And I worked with the lady a couple times, you know, trying to get things started, and it never seemed to pick up any steam anywhere. So.
And while you were on council, I'm sure, even in the time that you've lived here, you've seen the businesses in town go up and down. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, we were very, very happy. How many years ago was that? When every storefront in Elmore was full. We thought, you know, things are really buzzing, and then, 2008, 2009, something like that, the economy went bust, and of course, we've got those empty storefronts now, and it was nice. Before, actually, I don't think we have personally been hurt as much here in Elmore by the nationwide recession, if you want to call it that, as a lot of other places have been. But the big thing is losing money from the state and federal government. That's created more of a problem than what the local economy has. Our taxes have stayed up pretty decently, and for that we're thankful. But you try to get things to money to do things now, it's a lot harder to get it out of the state or the federal government than it was before. And some things get put off. The repair of the bridge over the portage. It's not unsafe, but they started talking about changing that about 4 years ago, and they set a date for doing it, and then they said, no, we're going to move that back again. We don't have the money again now. And I would say it's not going to fall down. You look at the railings on the side, you look like they might fall off, but the bridge itself is still safe. But that's something that could have been done a couple of years ago, and still is the way it was.
Yeah.
So there again, you get involved in other things you never dream about. The bridge was put on the historical sites in Ohio, and then it says you can't change it.
It has to be redone the way it is.
Yeah,
Yes.
and they're reluctant to do anything that if they can keep it the way it is, they prefer to do it that way. But that someday it'll have to be changed. I even have a picture of that bridge painted by a local woman hanging in my bedroom, and it's a kind of unique looking bridge with its nice arches underneath of it, things like that. But you think that that's going to be taken care of, and then ODOT comes by and says, no, we don't have any money anymore, and no, you've got that historical site situation there, and especially when there was an accident on the bridge and damaged one of the guardrail things up there, and when they went in and fixed it, they did not make any attempt to keep it looking exactly like the rest of it. They just fixed it. I said, well, what happened to all this historical site business then? We couldn't afford to do that, so we just put more pillars in, but they don't look the same. So, but once again, you and I drive by them how many times and don't notice that over there anymore. So that's just another one of those kind of situations. There are rules and regulations for just about everything. Sometimes probably too many rules and regulations, but they're done with a good purpose. But sometimes they do seem to create more of a problem than is necessary.
Yeah, because some laws counteract each other, but
Yeah.
but yeah, they're done with good intent.
Yeah, I'm sure that they were. The idea behind it was strictly good, but who knows? What kind of the saddest mistake you could make in teaching or in government is to make an exception. I mean, I don't care how good it sounds. If you make an exception, you may have a perfectly good reason, and that person what comes to it is that you did it for her. You don't have the same reason she did, but you did it for her, therefore you should make an exception for me. If you make exceptions, you don't have any rules.
That's right.
It's true.
That's right.
And when you do that with teaching, I think one of the worst things you can do there is play favorites, and to say that I loved all of my students equally well is not so. But I think I treated all of them equally well. And if you go make an exception with this person because she's such a sweetheart, you just forget the rules.
Yeah. That's not a bad segue to kind of my last question. Are there people in Elmore who have affected your life or who are your favorites or they're very interesting?
I mean, like students?
It doesn't matter.
Not so much
neighbors.
students. And I'd say, sure, there are some I can think of as being really great students and a lot of fun to have in your class and things like that. I think probably Lowell Cromwell has probably affected my own life about as much as anyone. Working with him, as the mayor, we don't always agree, but you don't have to agree with someone all the time to admire it. But Lowell works hard at it. That's all there is to it. I say he goes out on the limb once in a while, but he's one of those that and there are people. I can think of one or two I think affected my life adversely. I won't name any of those names right now, but there's one in particular that I will never care for as long as he's around here, and he still is. So, you know, I've had a lot of people that I've liked a lot. Pat Hetrick was one of them. I thought Pat was a good administrator. He was blunt about doing things his way. About the second year I was here, he came to me and he said, Bob, do you like teaching here? And I said, yes, I do. He says, well, he says, in that case, I suggest that you start wearing a necktie. And I said, oh yeah? Because where I'd taught it before, it was, I wore a necktie a lot, but I didn't wear it every day. And Pat said, you should wear one every day. And so, okay, I wore one every day for the next 33 years or something like that. And now I look at a day, I go over to school and most of the guys don't wear, in fact, casual Friday looks like it's runs from casual Monday through Friday a lot of times. And maybe they teach just as well, but I don't wear one when I go over there now. Pat's not there anymore, so no, he hadn't been there for a long time. But I would just, he says, if you like teaching here, but you should start wearing a necktie more often. You got the message, fella. So
Yeah.
So, no, it's been a great town to live in. I really never had any idea I'd still be here after any time after 1963, and it's home. This is my town now. In fact, I go back to my old hometown, which isn't very much of it left there anymore. It's Elmore is 200 people, 200 more people live here now than there were in 1963. We had 1,200 people then. We got 1,400 people now. It's a little bigger, but you know, it's pretty much the same town. Oh, that was probably the biggest controversy we ever had when I was on town council was when we put in the turnpike, when they put the exit there. I still am amazed at some of the stories that people gave us for why it would not be a good idea to have that exit coming out in Elmore. All those police chases would start in Toledo and they'd get on the turnpike and run right down here to Elmore and get off. I don't know why, but that was going to be a common occurrence. All those prostitutes in Toledo would be parking down our streets here in Elmore, and people were really gung-ho, really excited about that thing, and don't think that any number of those things have ever occurred. So that, but you know, that was the scare talk. Big town meetings, fill up places wherever we met. There were crowds there, and they shouted at each other. You know, it was interesting, but it was democracy in action again. But you know, people do get way out on a limb sometimes on some of the things they'll say. And I have heard that there's a couple of people who have never used the Elmore exit anytime yet. So that's their problem if they don't want to. But I guess they're proving the point that you don't need it.
Well, everybody's got to live their life the way they think they have to do it.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I know, unless you've got something else you'd like to add.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to.
We appreciate it as well. We appreciate it very much.
And how are you planning on doing this kind of thing? What are you're going to do what with it now?
We're actually doing them a lot for people who come into the library for historical information, but we're also going to do snippets from these interviews shown in the depot and the log cabin during the events, so that people can kind of get a flavor for Elmore as well as seeing the historical.
Okay. So I might get a chance to see the whole thing put together someday.
You might do that.
Okay.
And if you request, we can make that happen.
Well, no, I'd like to see what all the other people have got to say.
Sure.
And I don't think there's anything so erudite came out of this mouth today, but, anyhow, it will be interesting to see how many people you're going to be.
Well, that will depend on cooperation, and we've been getting pretty good cooperation. I think we've probably done around 10 maybe so far, and we're kind of doing different angles all the time. You know, we get different requests or different thoughts on it, and so we don't know where we'll end up.
Okay. Well, when you do end up, let me know. I'd like to see how this whole thing turns out.
Well, thanks, Bob.
Hey, sure.